Well, then I will speak to give you something to check.
Check 1, 2. It's working. Yeah, it's working.
Speak to give you something to check.
Check 1, 2.
Checkity, checkity.
It's working. Yeah, it's working.
Speak to give you something to check.
Check 1, 2.
Checkity, checkity. Every time we do this, I'm reminded of that band that did the YouTube live thing.
Right.
That was so brilliant to do that. All right. The live feed is feeding. The YouTubes are tubing. Commence local recording devices if you have not already.
It's on.
Oh, I got to do
capturing electrons as we speak.
Got to do my preemptive power cycle. Forgot to do that part. I don't know why that makes any difference, but it does. Alrighty then. And of course, brightness blows out because I moved a millimeter to the right. So the camera says, I don't know what to do. I just need to win the lottery. Or, cash in a few $1 million in Bitcoin like somebody I know, and then I won't have this problem. I can have some real gear. And so there's this sale. It's not a sale. It's a crappy product that was overpriced that's now still overpriced but less overpriced. But one of those hot deals on Amazon popped up. It's a quadcopter shaped like an X-Wing fighter. And the reviews on it are terrible, that it's not durable and the motors burn out. But I kind of want it anyway. Knowing that it's bad, knowing that it's going to break, I kind of want to spend the $40 on it just because it's a quadcopter shaped like an X-Wing fighter. They have
I love the idea.
They have 3 models. They have the X-Wing fighter, they have a TIE fighter, and then they have a speeder bike. And apparently they have some sort of, just from reading the description on Amazon, some sort of laser tag, like you can actually battle and like the sensors will register a hit kind of thing. Makes me want to buy a bunch of them and just like set them all around there. I mean, I've got a space right there, just a blank space, just itching to have another piece of something there.
Yeah, TIE fighter would look good there.
It would. I mean, an X-Wing would be out of place because everything here is dark side except Chewie. He's, of course, that may not be. It's some other square-headed Wookiee. Oh yeah.
Well, you could just get more and put the dark side on one side, and
I got to bring balance to the Force, right?
Right.
Of course, this could be Finn, so we don't know that he's a bad stormtrooper.
That is correct. He could be. No, we pretty much know.
Let's see. Go ahead and get my timers set up.
I'm going to try something. I hope this doesn't make any bad noise. Hold on a sec. Can you hear me now?
Oh, that was unpleasant.
Was it? Oh.
And the sound's really bad.
I got this Rolls mic switch that's supposed to mute the mic. So, like, if you're going to have a coughing spurt or something, you hit that button. But yeah, I see.
Do it again.
Yeah, it's on now. Oh my God! Look at that.
It's not muting. It's actually increasing your volume when you do it.
What the hell is going on with this thing? I spend good money on this crap. Anyway, first world problems.
And I have yet to find one of those that doesn't make an audible click when used.
Right.
No matter what the manufacturers say, there always seems to be. I considered, making one of my own, but even in my experiments, you can't short that circuit without
something audible.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you could do like a potentiometer with a resistor and somehow,
It'd have to be a slow fade. Right. I mean, I just keep my volume knob right next to me, but I'm using a mixer that works. But that's what you have to do. You'd have to have a push button potentiometer that over the course of 2 seconds or so drops it. But then you'd have to know 2 seconds ahead of time when you're going to cough.
Yeah.
I would say that one is either not hooked up right or is just a bummer all the way around because it doesn't mute your volume. It makes it louder.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to get the screwdriver out on that. There's something not right.
All right. Are we ready to rumble?
Yep.
Sure.
Is there anybody in the chat room yet?
Yeah, Ginger's there.
Okay, good. So we got people there. Somebody let me know. Of course, once again, I'm the ghost of Cockerel present. Miles, this is going to be pretty much all you.
Okay. I'm going to have to, not wing it, but yeah, I've got some, I'll just rant about that and we'll chime in on that and it will be great, that.
Right. I do want to talk a little bit about the Solo movie, just because it's the kind of thing we talk about around here.
Yeah, no, you take as long as you want.
So, the intro may be a bit long, but it's okay. All right. I'm going to make a marker and begin. Starting the timer. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GeekRant, episode 326, The Decentralized Revolution. Recorded June 3rd, 2018, and brought to you by Element OP Productions. ElementOP.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Drive Time Radio for Geeks. I am your host, Mark, sometimes known, actually only during introductions. That's the only time anybody ever calls me that, as the Sultan of the Soapbox. And joining me here this week, as always, are your two stalwart co-hosts, Seth, the Gooey Kid Anderson, and Miles, the Aussie Janier Wakeham. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Mark, and welcome to the Yopiites present today.
Happy summer, everyone. It is summer now, isn't it?
It is summer. Well, actually, June 21st, so we're still spring.
Oh, I've ripped off. We got 110 degrees outside. It's summer.
No, it's it's only spring.
It's pre-summer.
Yeah. So last week we missed the show for two very good reasons. Miles was attending some small sporting event. I don't remember exactly what, something insignificant, I think. And we were going to soldier on without him, but Seth had absolutely no internet access due to a confluence of things. It was like he could have been struck by lightning on the way to pick up his lottery winnings. And had better odds of everything that went wrong last week. So at that point, we just decided that the podcast gods had decided we were not doing a show, so we didn't do a show, but we're back.
Yeah, either that or Miles is a super hacker and didn't want us to do the show without him. One of those two.
That's possible, too.
Yeah. Yeah, me, sporting events and technology, I'll tell you all about that. That's
So tell the audience what the sporting event in question was.
Well, everyone has a bucket list, right? And one of my things on my bucket list, a buddy of mine and I, for years, have said we want to, once a year, go to a major motorsport event for, I don't know, like 5 years, like 5 times, right? Once every year for 5 years. And so we decided after, years and years of saying, yeah, we'll get around to it. Yeah, we'll get around to it. Okay, this was the year. So you have to book this stuff a year ahead. Last August, I booked just 2 seats for the Indy 500. And I've been to Indianapolis and to the Motor Speedway a couple of times before, but never to that race. And I had to book a year ahead. I got some really great seats. And then, I don't know, maybe a few days before the race, realized that 310,000 people go to this thing. And it's the biggest, most populated sporting event on the planet. Yeah. You like gridlock? There, that's where you get it.
And all 300.
Was it?
all 300,000 people are only there because they hope somebody's going to crash.
Yeah, we had a few of those.
Yeah.
But we celebrated. My buddy from Australia flew over for this, and in his hometown is our man, the guy we follow, a guy by the name of Willpower, and I'm happy to say he won the damn race.
All right.
Yeah, so we were extremely overjoyed, and the celebrations continue.
And unlike, say, Seattle or Detroit, you didn't burn your city down when your guy won.
No, we were very well behaved. Really. No, we were very happy. And no, we were just overjoyed to see our guy win the race. That's
That's
how
good.
it goes sometimes. Yeah.
So the only monumental event in my life last week, other than Memorial Day, which is always a celebration of the freedoms in honor of those who gave up their lives to defend those freedoms, I went to see the Solo movie, Solo, a Star Wars movie, with my wife. Surprisingly easy to get tickets on opening day for a Star Wars movie. This has been the lowest grossing. They're hoping they will make their money back at this point. It's been the lowest grossing Star Wars movie, and people have been asking why. And I'm going to give a totally spoiler-free review, and that's part of the problem is you can't spoil it. Donald Glover was excellent as Lando Calrissian. The new guy whose name escapes me was fine as Han Solo. Not great, not terrible, but fine. It was a good movie. I give it a B, solid B, maybe A minus. Not great, not terrible, worth seeing. And let's face it, I'm of the age and disposition that whatever Disney puts out with a Star Wars logo on it, I'm going to go purchase, and then I'm going to buy the DVD, and then I'm going to probably see it more than one. I'm just that guy. I'm their core audience. So I'm going to take whatever pablum they feed me and be happy with it. But it was just a fine movie. The problem with it, the biggest problem, is we know the future of Han Solo and Chewbacca and Lando Calrissian. So there can be no real danger for these characters. Whatever is going on the screen, whatever potential danger they're in, whatever the precarious situation, they get out of it. Not only do they get out of it, but there's no serious damage. I mean, Han Solo doesn't have a scar on his face. In A New Hope, there's nobody's missing a hand. Chewbacca, it doesn't get seriously. It doesn't lose an arm, right? So we know these characters not only get through it, but get through it completely unscathed. And so that whether you're thinking about it or not, that's always there in the back of your mind. That there's no peril for these people at all. So the only people that can die, the only people that can be injured, the only sacrifices that can make are secondary characters that are introduced, have 5 minutes of screen time, and then sacrifice themselves. And there's no real loss there. So I think that's the reason Solo is just not doing well, and I think that's the problem that all of the prequel-esque, the between 3 and 4 movies are going to suffer from.
I mean, Rogue One was good because
they were willing to just go all out and scorch earth.
Yeah. And you didn't know. Well, yeah, that's true. You didn't really know if everyone involved died. You knew a lot of them died, but
the same thing. You had to introduce these characters, and honestly, I didn't really care about any of them. I mean, did I care that Saw Gerrera died? No, not even a little bit. The main character, whose name I don't even remember. I don't remember her name, and she was the main character movie. By the end, I was somewhat interested in whether or not she lived or died, but not really. So that's the problem. But it's a fine movie.
Right.
If it were not a Star Wars movie, it'd probably be a better movie. If you took that same plot, the same things that happen, and changed the names, people would probably have a better reaction to it. But another part of it is there are certain plot points they had to hit. They had to figure out how Han Solo gets the Millennium Falcon. They had to explain the Kessel Run. These are plot points that they had to hit, and they had to squeeze those into a movie. And so it was contrived, and there was no real danger. But still worth watching. Donald Glover's awesome. So that's my review of my movie. Seth, you saw a movie that I will wait until it comes out on Netflix because I'm not at all interested in it. But tell us about Deadpool 2.
All right, so the spoiler-free review of Deadpool 2, it has very much in common with the first film. And I think part of what made the first film great was was Deadpool breaking the fourth wall and the novelty of it, and that you've never experienced anything like it in the superhero genre on screen. And now Deadpool 2 was a lot more of the same. It wasn't as good of a story overall as the first Deadpool, and I don't know, it was okay. Like, if you compare, like, if you set the bottom I have a new bottom in fan fiction sequels, that is the Independence Day one, and you go up from there to Matrix, and then from Matrix you go up to like Pacific Rim. Deadpool is okay. It's not great. It wasn't as good as the first one because, I mean, yes, they used different dialogue, but they delivered the same jokes. And so
that was my concern, because I got tired in the first one of the jokey joke. It was like every 45 seconds there was a dick joke. You could just count on it. And I from everything I've heard about the new one, it's more of the same. So it's like every 15 seconds now. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, he turns to the audience, and goes, "Well, that seems like lazy writing." Okay, one time is good, but by the time like come around 2 and 3, it's like that's really lazy writing. Right. So not bad. There was like the character Domino. She rocks in this movie. And I'm disappointed that Stan Lee wasn't in it. And of course, the internet says it was like a scheduling thing. They just couldn't make it. So I was disappointed that there was no Stan Lee cameo, but a lot of famous people show up, and some of them are very funny when they're in there. So.
All right.
And not bad, but okay.
And just one quick story I wanted to follow up on. I believe it was September or October. It's been 6-ish months ago, maybe 7. I told you about how I scored and lucked into this vending machine at a construction site that I lugged home, 700 pounds of it. And I cleaned it up, and it was in good shape, and I was going to put it down in my man cave. And I think I mentioned at the time that it was sitting in my garage because it's 4 inches too wide to fit through any door in my house. And so it was never going to go in the man cave. Also, it didn't work. So I called out the weirdest guy I've ever met. And, I mean, let's be honest, that's saying something. I've met some weird guys. I podcast with weird guys all the time. And he couldn't get it working. He left. He came back a second time and couldn't get it working. And like, I don't know. He's kind of one of those, like, Kramer type guys. You never really know what's going on in his mind. He just left. He didn't tell me he was leaving. He left his tools. Like, I still have his power drill and his voltmeter in my garage. He just walked away. And that was, like, before Christmas. And I've texted him a couple of times. He hasn't responded. I owe him money for the time he was here, and I have his drill, but he just left. It's like maybe he just got so frustrated he couldn't take it anymore. I don't know. But he's gone completely off the radar, so I'm done with this thing. Initially, I thought I might convert it into a smoker because that would be cool. It's huge, and it's got the glass door and everything. But it's 700 pounds. Where am I going to put this thing? And how am I going to... Wherever I put it, that's where it's going to be for the rest of my life. I'm never moving it again. So I put an ad on Craigslist, make me an offer. I want it out of here. I put a couple of pictures of it. It said it doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work. It may be simple. It may be hard. I don't know. Make me an offer. And, of course, the first question everybody asks, how much do you want for it? What does make me an offer mean to you?
I was thinking you were going to get does it work?
Yeah, I got that. Well, I did. The after how much do you want for it was, does it work? And then the other one was, well, what model number is it? The model number I put on the correct... Did you even read the ad? Can you send me some pictures of it? So I sent the guy the same pictures that I'd posted on the ad. And finally, he decides to come get it. And I said, bring help. It's 700 pounds. And he wrote back, haha. No, and I sent him a link to the manufacturer website where it said shipping weight 700 pounds. So I'm not joking. It's that heavy. That's a feature. They tout that on the website, that it's hard to steal because it's so heavy. So college kid shows up with 3 of his college buddies in a mini truck, not even a full-size truck. And I'm like, this is not my thing. You guys load up, have a blast with it. And then as they managed to wedge it onto their tiny truck, which is riding at about a 45-degree angle now. And as they're pulling off, my wife says, "Did you tell them why it's in the garage?" I said, "Oh, no. Yeah, it's 39 inches at its narrowest point. You're not going to get it through any standard doorway. Good luck with that." And then I put the garage door down and walked in the house. So he paid me $75 for it. And so it's out of my house and I have a garage again. So the end of my vending machine story, sadly. I really wanted it, but I was glad to have it gone.
So scratch that off of ways to make your first million.
Yeah. Yeah, Miles was all, get it fixed up and start a business and teach your kids about how to be entrepreneurs. At this point, I'm like, it didn't cost me money to haul it to the dump. So I'm proud of that.
Oh, well.
All right, so now let's move on to the subject of the week. So we talked about this at the beginning of the year. I took 2 months and planned the first 2 months. Seth planned the next 2 months, and we're now in the first couple of months of Miles's show topics. And so we're about to dive down the geek rabbit hole heavier than we have in the past. Mine were pretty heavily pop culture. Seth was a lot more science, history and science and news and stuff. And now Miles is about to go all populist on us. So power to the people, Miles.
Well, yeah, deep dive in here. I wanted to just bring a conversation up about something which I think seems to have been forgotten in technology, and that's decentralization. So what I mean by that is, if you're an old hat at this stuff, you may remember the days of the old mainframe computer. It's probably still a few of them around, but basically you had a terminal to some big computer somewhere that you had some timeshare on. And we're talking 70s, 80s, sort of that sort of time. Well, the interesting thing about those types of computers is that because they were centralized and there were the people who controlled them, and we often refer to those people as the priests of the computer, who would either allow you or disallow you access to these machines, it spawned the revolution that is the personal computer revolution. A bunch of geek hobbyists wanted their own computer and didn't want to be dealing with, Lord so-and-so, a priest of the mainframe. They wanted their own machine in their bedroom. So they built one, and that created Apple and Tandy and Commodore and everybody else. And so the interesting thing about decentralization is it's often a bit of a reaction or a kind of activism almost against proprietary centralization of computing. I bring this up because this is a cycle which is repeated over and over again. We went from mainframe to personal computer, and then eventually to local area network, and then eventually to the internet. And then we have web servers, and now we're back into they're centralized, and we've all got these dumb browsers, and we're back into the centralized computing situation. And it just seems to me that this cycle, where we put the power back into the individuals, whether that be mobile technology, whether it be IoT, whatever it might be, is always a predictable and repeating event with computers. And I think we're at a point right now where we're about to go full hog crazy into decentralization. But what is really interesting to me, which is something I wanted to open up, kind of a discussion about, is it doesn't seem to be limiting itself to computing anymore. Decentralization seems to be rooting itself in anthropology almost. It's like we are now finding decentralized money, like Bitcoin, for example, and we're finding decentralized file storage, like BitTorrent, and we're finding decentralized, social media maybe. Maybe not. That's still sort of centralized around the Facebooks and Twitters and so on. But it seems like there's decentralization going everywhere. And I wanted to at least raise an alert or raise some focus on whether you guys think this is a good thing, a bad thing. Is it truly power to the people, or are we living in some sort of myth and it's never ever going to be power to the people?
Seth?
I agree. So I mean, sorry.
Well, do you think? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think
Okay.
decentralization is inherently a good thing?
Well, there's the demotivator that I first thought of whenever you started talking. None of us is as dumb as all of us. So, but decentralization is great when you have a population segment that is willing to put in the work to do it. One of the reasons decentralization seems to fail every so often is people get lazy and I don't want to protect my money. I want to put it in the bank, centralize all of our money in the banks and let the banks own it and let us rent our money back from them. Everybody could be running Linux and rolling their own operating system, but no, we don't want to do that. We want to run to Apple and have them tell us how we're allowed to have one button on our device that can do 17 different things if we hold our tongue just right. So I love the concept of decentralization, but unfortunately, the society that I'm familiar with, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but the society I'm familiar with doesn't seem to care much for decentralization. They want to have, I can't think of the right word. They want to have the security of somebody else to yell at, to blame when something goes wrong, so they don't have to blame themselves.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I'm reminded of the quote often attributed to Mark Twain, but everything's attributed to either Mark Twain or Ben Franklin, so I don't know if it really is or not, that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And this is just a rhyme throughout all of history. That people who are decentralized come together for the organization and the unity of purpose that centralization offers. But with that, they have to give up some autonomy, and they agree to certain rules. Then a group of people chafe at those rules and break off and decentralize, leaving a smaller group that is still centralized, and now the new decentralized group. And it's like mitosis of cells. You never lose the original centralization, but you continually decentralize and recentralize. And yeah, the personal computer took away the need to have a central mainframe, but now as we move things, quote, to the cloud, we're just having terminals in the mainframe again. So I don't think that. I think humans are too fickle and too unruly to ever truly be decentralized. We will always need some central authority. We will then chafe at that central authority and start all over again. Like HOAs are a great example of that. A group of homeowners get together and decide they want a way to force Bob down the street to put his trash cans behind his house instead of having them out front. So they form an organization. They vote that Bob is wrong, and then somebody else takes over that organization and decides that not only can Bob not have his trash cans out in front of his house, you can't park your boat in your own boathouse. You have to move it off somewhere else. And then and so it's just human nature.
So you see it as kind of like a sine wave thing. It's like it's sometimes, and it's going to go up and down based on whether people get fed up with who's managing centralization,
right?
Or
and so
they feel controlled.
Yeah. So there will always be a need for some sort of unity, and humans being what they are, they will always demand autonomy. Those two things will always be, a sine wave is a good example of bouncing back and forth. Between lesser or greater extremes. I always think of it like a pendulum. The pendulum swing starts big, and then it swings smaller, and then smaller, and then smaller. And then just when you think it's about to hit homeostasis, something big happens and moves this pendulum big again. And that's the way I see this happening.
Okay. I mean, the one thing that kind of came to mind with me was that technology advancing the way it has empowered that pendulum. Because if we didn't have an internet where we could connect everybody together, we wouldn't have the opportunity to decentralize. And yet having the internet has seemed to have been almost the polar opposite of that. The big winners have been central, stopping points on the internet. I had a very interesting experience at the airport when we flew back from Indianapolis. we came in on a very late flight. It was just after midnight. And so I wasn't expecting there to be too many cabs at the airport to get home, but I went out looking for a cab and there was nothing. I mean, not one in sight. There were maybe half a dozen people waiting for cabs, but no cabs. So, of course, I pick up my phone and I do the Uber thing, right? And all of a sudden on my phone, it says, yeah, there's an Uber 3 minutes away, but you have to go on to the other side, the other concourse at the airport and go to section 8 or whatever and wait there because that's where Ubers pick up. So 3 minutes, we're like,
so you had to get a cab
go.
to get to the Ubers?
Almost, yeah, but of course there's no cabs. So we ran across to this other thing, got there in time, and when I arrived, there must have been 80 people, all with their smartphones out, checking their Uber, and a line of Ubers you couldn't see the end of coming into the airport. And obviously that told me the death of the taxi and the rise of the Uber. If you think, what is Uber? It's a website. They don't own anything. They don't own a fleet of vehicles. They don't own big assets or anything like. It's a website. It's a technology company. And it's supposed to be the bastion of decentralization.
Until such time as they start imposing rules where Uber drivers don't want to follow those rules, and then you have a Lyft.
Exactly. And I guess you could see that repeating with Lyft. You can see that repeating with Airbnb. All of these supposed sharing economy, decentralized, butlers, websites that facilitate that sort of thing, eventually they have to become evil too. And now they're centralized in a decentralized sharing economy, and the downward spiral continues. I'm not sure where this ends up, but it just seems a very interesting dynamic. You know, you see this thing go up and down, like a sine wave, as we say. I did have a very interesting experience a few weeks ago, though. My wife and I went to a place in Mexico we go to pretty regularly called San Carlos. It's a small expat community, maybe about 8,000 to 10,000 gringos, Americans and Canadians for the most part. And there's no governance down there. It's a true, I guess I'd call it a voluntarist community. Everybody looks after everybody else. It was really interesting. The people are incredibly nice to each other. We had an Airbnb in an area in town overlooking the ocean, and you'd get up in the morning and you'd see people walking down the street and they'd wave hi. And, I remember when we were leaving, we were loading bags into our car, and this lady just walking down the street who just out on a walk, she says, "Here, let me help you with that." Comes over, picks up bag, puts it in the car. It's like, we didn't ask her to do that. If I was in New York, I think she's trying to steal my bag. No, she's trying to help because everybody helped each other there. It was crazy. We were
what is it about human nature that makes you immediately suspicious of generosity?
Living in Los Angeles long enough, I guess. That'll do it. No, I mean, it's wonderful to be generous, but it doesn't happen like that anymore, does it?
No, I came walking out of a Tractor Supply. I had bought some dog food, and and there's these two ladies like 2 cars down from me, and they have this like 50-pound sack of food they wheeled over to their car, and then they're looking at it and they're looking at the open trunk. And so I'm like, okay, I'm fat, but I mean, I'm not that out of shape. So I walk over and said, "Would y'all like a hand with that?" And of course they were grateful. And so I just pick it up and put it in their trunk for them. And so, yeah, that seems to be the exception that happens now rather than the rule.
Yeah. Well, when having, kind of been weirded out by this whole, wow, people are nice here. After
this is strange.
Past that, yeah, this is strange. I'm not used to this. I was talking with the local real estate company there, and they were telling me that the way this community works, because they're detached from government, right? There's no government of San Carlos. They're in Mexico. They're not in the US. So they created their own voluntarist ambulance service. So everybody chips in like $150 a year, and they bought an ambulance, and and everybody shares a time to be sort of the on-call 911 operator, if you like. And if somebody has a fall, somebody has a heart attack, somebody needs medical assistance, there's a town 8 miles away that has a hospital. But to get somebody to that hospital, they take care of that first stage triage. And it's all done by volunteers. And if you're a nurse and you've got services to offer, you chip in and you are rewarded by the validation that you've got something to offer. And it's just amazing how they did this. They did this on their own. There was no central government, no giving up your power to a third party to do it all for you. No, they took it upon themselves to take care of it. We were talking about postal services. And what they did was they worked out that the closest U.S. town to where they are is Tucson. So they went up to Tucson and they found a deal with one of those mailbox providers. And he sold them a big mailbox for the town. So anytime you need mail, it gets delivered to Tucson. And because there's so many people going up and down the 15 freeway from Mexico to the US and back all the time, every time you go, you check to see if somebody needs to pick up the mail, and you pick up the mail, and when you come back, you bring it back. You are UPS. You are FedEx. And everybody shares the responsibility and everybody benefits from it. And I'm blown away by this stuff. I mean, this doesn't happen.
But there's a price to be paid for that, because there's no, two business day prime either. Right. There's a price to be paid for freedom.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Walmart in the close, nearest town that's not far away if you need something urgently. But if it's like personal mail or, your bills, things like that, this is how it works. To get back to the decentralized approach, there can be a solution in truly decentralized without requiring massive governance. It obviously works in computing. That's how we had client-server computing. I think it works in human anatomy and human social awareness, but I don't think you can't be lazy, right? You have to be willing to accept your own responsibility on things, and then once you get past that point, then you give to your neighbor, right? You look after your backyard, and then you help them deal with theirs. I think that's still available, That's
an excellent point. You mentioned computer networks, the internet, the way in which 3 people in 3 time zones are able to communicate in real time is because each of our sending devices takes full responsibility for making sure the information gets where it needs to go, and it'll retransmit as many times as it has to. It's a completely decentralized protocol. Everything is happening, sort of on good faith, but the end user, the receiving point, is free to discard whatever it wants to, anything that's garbage, and all the responsibility is on the sending packet. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms until you just said that, but that's why it doesn't work for humans, because we're unwilling to take the responsibility to make sure that the work gets done. We're unwilling to do the work twice or to do extra work to make sure that we get our end result. We want to do half or just a little less than half of the work, and then somebody else has to come the rest of the way.
Yeah. I think there's a future in this, but I say that cautiously because I think it comes down to there's one thing to rant and rave against the man, against the authority, against the government. At the same time, you have to be willing to actually do something, and rather than being aggressive towards it, maybe there's still a chance for us to invent our way out of this mess. What do you think, Seth?
Like I say, the decentralized notion is going to work great. Like the example of expats you gave, until somebody's going to come along and they're going to say, hey, if everybody will pay me, I will always make that run. And then people will say, I don't want the responsibility of making sure. So sure, I'll chip in. And so this thing that on the surface is a decentralized thing will become centralized. And so I don't know. I love the concept, but decentralization, I think the Chinese word for that is Shangri-La, maybe. It's a great pipe dream, but humans are too flawed as a species to for decentralization to work for the long term. We're also too and we're too flawed to allow ourselves to be totally rolled up into one centralized bureaucracy for the long term either. There'll be this continual fight, I think. So.
Well, so you said the long term. I'm going to disagree with you there. I don't think it's about duration, but about scale. Things like this work on a small scale. When you expect them to work on a large scale, that's when systems break down. And that's why people, that's why we're seeing, cryptocurrencies, depending on who you read, they're either taking off or they're melting down. And that depending on what stake they have in it. Cryptocurrencies are sort of our first attempt at this, it's taking something important and decentralizing it. The internet was obviously the early thing about that, but it wasn't important for a very long time. It became important after it proved itself. And we're trying to take cryptocurrencies, we're trying to take this thing and say it's important, the currency, and then take it decentralized and try to prove that it works after we've put importance on it. And I think that's kind of the problem. This stuff has to be proven to work before anybody will trust it, but people inherently don't trust things that don't have somebody's name on it. I mean, when I was working in the education world and I would try to implement some open source thing, the thing I got all the time was, what 800 number am I going to call when it breaks? Well, you're not. You're going to call me. You pay me to fix it. You don't need an 800 number. But again, there's that authority, that sense of somebody else's responsibility. As long as I know that there's somebody else who's responsible for this, I'm willing to implement it. But when the responsibility is ambiguous, that's where we have difficulty.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think the one thing that Linux got, it kind of got a bad rap at being the dirty bit of technology that no one cleaned up after. And it had that kind of college fraternity feel to it. Like these people can't be serious, they don't shave, they don't bathe enough, and that doesn't sell well when you're up against the suits of IBM or Microsoft or whoever. However, funny thing is they use that, the unbathed technology as the underpinnings of everything they sell. They just, know how to put lipstick on a pig, I guess.
I mean, one could say that that democracy is the ultimate in decentralization, and we Americans don't even trust democracy. We have a republic-based system because the decentralization of democracy is a little too unstable for something we consider important. When people are given the opportunity to be truly decentralized, you end up with a mob. That's been proven time and time again.
Well, there is a movement in the technology space towards decentralization, particularly coming out of the new generations in the Silicon Valley. And there is a series of conferences that are going on all the time I think they're called D3, that are all about decentralization. They have them all over the world. They're very popular. A lot of, big thinkers go there. And I think a lot of the popularity of this came from the cryptocurrency community because they saw that things like Ethereum and smart contracts and, the world computer and all that sort of thing was the epitome of decentralization, and that there might be a way that we can leverage this technology to solve a lot of human problems. And certainly value transfer or money is one. The concept of law or truth or accepted reality, who owns what, is another. There's so many opportunities in all of this, and it seems like decentralization is a common theme in how they want going forward to try and solve these problems. Have you guys come across these before? Are you seeing this in any part of your normal daily life?
Only in news articles on the web. Ethereum and trust and contracts. I like the idea of decentralized truth. We are sort of, programmed from early on to think that all truth must come from a central authority. and you go get a marriage license, not because you need to have any special skills to get married, but because the central authority says yes, you're married. You get all these things that we have a central authority that gives us our truth. I like the idea of decentralized truth, but it's a dodgy thing that it's such a paradigm shift that I'm not sure that we can do it in my lifetime.
And the thing about that, so much of the centralization happened in our parents' lifetime. You gave the example of the marriage license and all the other things you have to have licenses for now that 2 or 3 generations ago you didn't, that we accept has, the great centralized authority of a federal bureaucracy has never done any wrong and is all wise, and they know what's best, and it's always been that way. Whenever you transport our grandparents into today, and they would say, I don't have to get that to do this. I've been doing it that way my whole life. And so, I don't know. Interesting thoughts.
Well, in summary, I wanted to at least draw a parallel between, it's easy as geeks. We don't get out of the house much, and we're on the computer all the time, and we're doing programming or whatever we're doing. And in that little microcosm world, we've created a petri dish that really is the anthropology of the human species, and all of the problems that we tend to find a solution for in technology because it's a very two-dimensional, controlled environment. Computers don't have feelings. Computers do what you tell them to do reliably all the time, repeat, and rinse and repeat. We don't have that problem with those problems become almost like a beacon for how humanity might be able to perform against them. Or not, I don't know. I'm just curious as to why the geeks seem to see things ahead of social revolution in some ways,
Because geeks are bad at social.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's not that we're bad at social. Our social is a different kind of social. And the reason it's easier for geeks is because we've rejected the greater societal culture and substituted one of our own choosing. And so because, and in a lot of ways, we're two separate societies, and, and there's translators on the fringes trying to make sure they don't get too far apart. And so that's why one's able to do one thing really well and the other's able to do the other thing really well. So maybe our society just isn't as rigid, or the rigidity in our society is in a different place than the rigidity in the greater society as a whole. How's that for some deep thinking?
I like it.
Sounds good to me.
I want to have a further conversation. Not tonight. We're out of time, and we need to think to do this well. But I want to have a further conversation at another time about this concept of decentralized truth. For example, Martin Luther became an outcast among the religious folks of his day because he wanted to decentralize truth. He wanted to take the Bible and translate it into German, the common language. And then the power brokers of religion in his day didn't like that because, well, then anybody will know the truth. And when you decentralize the truth, the people in power don't like that. So I think you've stumbled onto something here, Miles, that is deeper than I realized initially.
Yeah. I noticed when I was putting the notes together, if I had done this 10 years ago, it would have been a bits and bytes discussion about, good networks, bad networks, good mainframes, bad mainframes. And then I started realizing it's just a metaphor of what society is all about. So, yeah, maybe the answer is in history.
Yeah. And since we've brought up history, Seth, tell us what happened this week in history.
All right, Mark. Well, I want to let you and everyone else know that on May the 31st, 1991, all your base belong to us. So Sega releases the video game Zero Wing for the Sega Mega Drive system in Europe. While the game was never released in North America and was relatively unknown until years later when the poorly translated opening scene was popularized on the internet. And so all your base belong to us was a meme before there was memes, and it is awesome. And so that happened this week in history, Mark. And now back to you.
There was a time not too long ago when your direct measure of cool was whether or not you could properly use the phrase, all your base are belong to us.
Yep.
I've stumbled over that one many a time.
The original video that made it popular is on YouTube. You can find it, and all of its techno remix, 80 or 90s thumping glory.
Awesome. And today, if you said that to a kid, they probably wouldn't get the reference at all. But not only would they not get the reference, they wouldn't even understand what it means. So, when just a few years ago, high school kids were making fun of me for not knowing what it means, and now high school kids don't know what it means. So, cool as a moving target.
They only say that because they haven't achieved our level of cool. That's the only reason they say that.
And now, Seth, what do you have to lower my productivity? That's making you look like a better hiring option.
Monet. That's if you've ever wanted to monetize your website, you can go to monetizeyourwebsite.com and put in the URL. And if you've ever wanted to, this is how you do it. So to monetize your website, go to monetizeyourwebsite.com. Link will be in the show notes. And
I'm doing it now.
It's visual. You have to.
I mean, I could tell by the spelling, I think, where this is going to go. I'm still loading, but I get the feeling this is a really heady joke.
It is, and it took me a minute to realize what was going on, and I was like, "Oh, this is greatness." I think this is the perfect. For sites like this, the internet was born, and I thank you to the person who put the time and effort into this.
Yeah, I mean, there's dozens of articles written every day about how to monetize your website, and this place does it all in one shot. And I'm super excited about it. Thank you, Seth. This is life-changing.
I thought so. But yeah, and so this is visual. Just go to elementop.com and find the GeekRant episode 326, and it will be under Seth's link down at the bottom, and monetizeyourwebsite.com.
Yeah, and you're guaranteed 100%. I mean, this is rare. Not only is it free, but it's guaranteed to monetize your website. So, awesome. All right, and now this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can contact us. Let us know what you think. Ask us questions, that sort of thing. You can go to elementop.com, the newly monetized elementop.com website, and click the Contact Us button at the top of the page. Answer the world's hardest CAPTCHA. Fill out the form there, and that will get send a nicely formatted email that gets priority in my inbox. And I will read your message. I will probably respond to your message. I will likely ridicule your grammar and typing, but that's okay. We encourage your feedback here. You could also go dial 559-IM-OP and leave us a voicemail on our Google Voice mail, and we'll play that on the air most likely. Or you can send an email to GeekRant@elementop.com. There it is. And that goes to all three of us, lest you think I am filtering mails to the other two. We like to hear what you think. Especially if you think good thoughts. Another thing you could do that would be really awesome is if you told other people what you think. If you like our show specifically. I mean, I do appreciate the couple of people, and it's just a couple, who've taken the time to log in to iTunes, pull up our listing there, and comment really negative things. I appreciate the passion and the effort that you went through to go there, to do that. I understand that geeks are passionate people, and I respect you for doing that, but I would really prefer that if you're going to go through all that effort, you could at least say something positive about the show. So I would appreciate if you did that. Also, Stitcher, wherever else you get your podcast, if there's an opportunity there to rate and review, I would appreciate it if you did that. There's also the option to go to patreon.com/elementop and throw money at us. Money is always a good thing.
We like money.
We like money. Money would make sure that I have a better rig here so that my face doesn't suddenly go ghost white every few seconds and I have to fix it. But since only 3 of you ever watch the live streams, it doesn't really matter. I understand. So anyway, thanks for being with us. This is as always the best part of my week. Miles, Seth, any final words of wisdom before we say goodnight?
No.
Not really.
And that's why they're the best in the business, or at least the best I can afford on what I pay them. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week because that's it for this episode of the GeekRant.
Toodaloo.
After all that, we finished with about 2 minutes to spare.
Hey, I had no idea what the session timer was. Just going with it.
That's all right.
That seemed to work.
I've just decided it's my job to keep that going, not yours.
Well, you're doing a good job. I mean, we're not over. We're not going over, which is good. I am looking here because we are going to Mexico City on Tuesday, and I think I'm there for a week. So I'm just trying to find out where I'm going to be next Sunday to make sure that I'm going to be able to do the show. And I can't find anything in my reservations here. So talk amongst yourselves, and I'll confirm. I'm pretty sure we're in Mexico City next Sunday.
I just want to travel with you sometime, just for the experience. Just be Miles' tag along for a little while. Would be awesome.
Really? Here's the last 3 weeks of my life. Right, Phoenix to San Carlos, back to Phoenix to Austin, from Austin to Dallas, from Dallas to Indianapolis, from Indianapolis to Phoenix, Phoenix to LA, LA back to Phoenix, and I'm here. And we got back yesterday.
And it probably cost you $7.93 to do all of those flights combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did not cost me a dime for hotels and flights.
Yeah. See, that's why I want to travel with you. I want to learn from the master. All right, YouTube people, thanks for hanging out with us. I'm cutting you off now. You're dead to me for at least another week. Bye, guys.